Hey folks, Nick here from another BookTube channel, and we're continuing the Swamp Thing read-along today with Swamp Thing number 40. This is an interesting issue. I remember liking it a lot when I first read it many years back, and I do still like it now. I think it's a pretty fun issue, but I do think that there are definitely some instances where it kind of misses the mark. Um, it is, if not clear from the cover, it is a werewolf issue, and I love a good werewolf story, and I think this is a decent werewolf story, um, though there's definitely some criticisms that can be levied against it for maybe kind of missing its own point a little bit. Um, I think the cover is great. I really love the cover of the black silhouetted wolf with the red blood, the full moon, which is so important to werewolf lore, and of course, Swamp Thing was just like, ugh. And the issue opens with this character, Phoebe, doing some grocery shopping. She's at the store, and one of the things she's picking up are tampons, feminine products. And we get kind of a lot of internal narration in this issue. I don't know if it's more so than usual, but it certainly felt like it was more than usual. Um, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll read out this here. The music system hums Moon River beneath its breath, and she wonders briefly why women's lives should be punctuated with blood. Taking the bright package from the shelf, she places it in her basket. Long ago, the Penamaquat women were taken each month by their grandmothers and confined in the Red Lodge. The lodge stood upon stilts that its dark and sullen female power should not taint the earth. She considers them heavy and aching, squatting for days in the stifling blackness of the lodge. On the package in her basket, a laughing woman runs through endless fields beneath a cornflower sky. They were forbidden to stand or lie down or see the moon. They could touch nothing, even themselves. Their food was passed to them on sticks beneath the silent gaze of their parchment-faced elders. The checkout lady places the package in a paper bag as if to protect her other groceries and demands $7. She pictures them sweltering in airless shadow, cool moonlight outside, silver and unattainable. All she can imagine is their anger. And that last line is going to be repeated throughout the issue. It's going to keep coming back to Phoebe, and it'll keep getting expanded upon, as will these three red dots here, which are indicative of a couple things. And the first, the most obvious, and we turn the page and we see it's repeated already. The first is the visualization of menstruation, because she's picking up feminine products, and so these blood droplets are visually recalling that, but they also become something else very shortly. And Phoebe leaves the store and she passes by like a sex shop that's got women in degrading positions, like these women who are wearing leather masks that are zipped up so they can't even speak. We get another feminine product ad that makes it seem really glorious. But we keep returning to this line of, she's imagining their anger in darkness turning. And then down here, their anger in darkness turning, unreleased, unspoken. Its mouth a red wound, its eyes hungry, hungry for the moon. And we cut to Swamp Thing and Abby sharing a kiss under the full moon in Louisiana. And this is a beautiful page. The name of the issue is The Curse, written by Alan Moore, art by Stephen Bissette and John Totleben. They are reunited, Swampy and Abby, after his trip to Rosewood, Illinois, and they're talking about how it's comforting that no matter where he is in the world, he can, pretty much in an instant, within a minute, leave his body where he is and then find his way back to Abby. He says it's nice to know that no matter that anywhere in the world, I'm only a step away from you. And she likes that. She likes to hear that. But she also asks, what about Constantine? Do you have him figured out yet? Do you trust him? And we get the very clear no from Swamp Thing. He's not trusting Constantine, and I don't really blame him at this point because Constantine has done nothing but kind of string him along. Uh, watch the previous episodes of this series if you haven't already. And Constantine has been promising Swamp Thing this knowledge about him, give him information to teach him more about what he really is. And he's not delivering on that. So Swamp Thing has decided that he's going to go to the next locations. Constantine asked him to meet him in Kenneskook, Maine. And so Swamp Thing has resolved that he's going to do that, but then after that, he's not following him anymore. He's going to stay home in Louisiana with Abby. And Abby tells him, you know what? You don't ask me to feed you or tidy the swamp or iron shirts, and I get fresh flowers all year round. You're just the sort of person I imagined marrying when I was little. Except, not green and without all the patches of fungus. And that sentiment is immediately offset by Phoebe back in Kenneskook, Maine, where her and her husband are having a little dinner party. They got some friends over, and her husband is she's kind of like being, I don't know, it's not really like rude, but it's definitely talking down to his wife or talking down about his wife in front of their friends. So he's talking about how they got this new house in a great location and how it used to be the site of this sort of lodge where the Indians sent their squaws when they started getting cranky around that time of the month. Myself, I don't blame them. Ha ha ha. Phoebe knows more about it than me. You read a book, ain't that right, sweetheart? And she gets this look over her face of these deep shadows. And again, we get that recurrence of their anger in darkness turning. And we get those red dots again. And this time it's more obvious that it's in the shape of kind of a face. We're getting eyes and we're getting a mouth. And she moves on. She moves past the comment. She doesn't say anything. She offers coffee and cookies to their guests. And the guest's husband also says, sure, but no more cookies for Joni here. She's still trying to get her figure back after the kids. And that was 2 years ago. And immediately Phoebe's thinking again about the women in the lodge, having to eat from sticks like lepers. And again, that response of their anger in darkness turning unreleased, unspoken. And what we get on the next page is she goes and she picks up a spoon, and it's a silver spoon, and it feels weird, like when it touches her skin. Like there's something about the silver spoon that she's immediately like rejecting, and she drops it, and she could sense that it's not the type of silver that she wants, is what she describes here. She's looking for what kind of silver does she need? Not hard, not cold, not mined or smelted or shaped by man. She's looking up at the moon. Their anger in darkness, turning, unreleased, unspoken. Its mouth a red wound, its eyes hungry for the moon. So we get the red dots coalescing here, and we're getting the full face of a wolf around it. And she sees the moon, and she kind of has a reaction to it. She shudders. She goes to bed that night, and her husband Roy remarks that her eyebrows need plucking. So that night she sleeps facing the wall. And then says all the next day she's feeling this weird feeling in her stomach, something that is kind of impatient and growing. And we get that Alan Moore segue to something else that's growing, which is Swamp Thing showing up in Maine. And now that Swamp Thing knows how to fast travel, we get panels like this, which I love. I love seeing him quickly grow his body. It's a great addition to this series. It makes for a lot of really great visuals. So Swamp Thing is in Maine, and he immediately senses that there is some primal power that's present here, and he can sense it. He doesn't need directions. He immediately sets off to go find it. We rejoin Phoebe and Roy Phoebe's outside, again, underneath the moon, feeling strange. And her husband's asking, "Where's my dinner?" She says, I'm not hungry. I don't want dinner." He says, "Well, what about my dinner?" And again, that response, their anger in darkness, turning, unreleased, unspoken. She tries to get him to go away, and he hits her with, what women love to hear. "Oh, I get it. It's PMS, right?" As if that were an excuse for everything. And he keeps going at her about that. We get that response again. Their anger in darkness, turning, unreleased, unspoken. Its mouth a red wound. Its eyes hungry, hungry for the moon. And Roy tells her, he's trying to get a response from her. So he's saying, "Well, spit it out." And so she falls to her knees. And yep, she certainly spits it out all right. Great werewolf transformation where the snoot comes out of her throat, out of her mouth. She literally just crawls out of her own skin, and we've got a big old werewolf. And I like this werewolf. I think it's a little funny because it's kind of like a joke that sometimes when creators need to depict that there's like a male or female version of something that's not typically human, they will unnecessarily give that character, like boobs, for no reason, other than to just be like, okay, that identify that's the female, even if it makes no sense that thing would have boobs. So I'm really glad to see that they didn't just make a werewolf with boobies, but we still get a kind of femininity to it with the long hair. Like not just a hairy body, but around the head, we get actual like long flowing hair. I think that's a fun, interesting, different way to portray like this is a female version of this mythical creature. Your mileage may vary on that, but I like that. So Roy's freaking out because he just saw his wife turn into a werewolf right in front of his eyes, and she starts chasing after him. He runs into the house, but that door is not going to stop the hungry wolf, who is terrorizing him, going after him, because she just cannot take anymore being spoken down to. That feeling of, she's feeling like this is her own Red Lodge, where she's being treated like othered. And I think that's an idea that Alan Moore kind of gets right here, and I see where he's going with it. I think maybe he fumbles the ending a little bit, and we'll see that. But Roy is trying to run away. He bumps into the Swamp Thing, and that's just one thing too many, so he faints immediately. And now we get a little standoff in front of the full moon. And Swamp Thing says, "In my mind, I hear my own voice speaking, saying, 'I am of the earth. What are you?' And in my mind, another voice answers, 'I am woman. Stand not between me and my wrath.'" Very good line. And Swamp Thing talks about how he feels a necessity to kind of stop the wolf, stop the woman from killing this man, but this is not his place of power. It is hers. And the necessity of my goal is not enough. I think this is a little tenuous. I'm not sure what that means, that this is not his place of power, it's hers. I understand that, like, under the full moon, the werewolf might have an edge, but we've established previously that Swamp Thing can literally control anything green. So I don't know. I feel like it should be a fair fight. So I don't know. That to me is a little weird. But Phoebe the wolf grabs Roy by the head, and so she goes to deliver the killing blow, but she decides to stay her hand. It's not really who she is, even in this form. It's not what she is, but she's still crazed, because she has no release for this frustration she's feeling, and so she destroys everything else around her. She just destroys the house, the mailbox, the car, and it's not enough. So she runs off. into the town, and we get a scene of her, destroying the stuff that she passed earlier when she was shopping. The bridal gown store. She smashes the windows and uh, destroys the mannequins. And it said in the narration here, she knows then that there is no escaping the Red Lodge, for its cruel essence is in all things, and the Red Lodge is everywhere. Again, a good idea being presented by Moore, that this old system of oppression, of not understanding just basic female biology, creating this mythology, creating this, you know, wanting to separate them and kind of keep them down. It's perpetuated throughout our modern culture, where we continue to do that in the way that we speak to women, in the way that we advertise to them, and what we expect of them. So again, good idea. Though the wolf also breaks through that sex shop, smashes through the window. I looked at this panel for a really long time when I read this, because I've grown to really love John Totlebin's inking. It was, this method of just like straight lines all the way through wasn't my favorite in the beginning, but this is incredible. Like, using only straight lines that are of varying thickness to create form is insane. Like, that is insanely talented. And I stared at this, and I look at it, and I'm just blown away by how impressive his inking is. And Swamp Thing catches up with the wolf, and he asks, "Please, you must let me help. You must tell me what it is you want." The wolf replies, "I am woman. I seek release from this stifling place that has been built for me." Swamp Thing says, "I cannot give you that release." And so the wolf says, "Then give me death." And the wolf runs off to the supermarket where the story began. And we did see on that first page, the first thing that we saw was this ridiculous knife display, where these knives are jutting out point first out, into the store. And I read the introduction of the trade paperback for this, that contains this issue. Steve Bissette wrote that introduction, and he said when he was doing this issue, he tried to go against the script because he couldn't imagine why a supermarket would ever stock knives like this because it's so dangerous. And I'm inclined to agree. It's very much like it's only like this so that we can get this ending where the wolf impales itself on the knives, basically kills itself, because she would rather be dead than continue living under this oppressive thumb of the perpetual Red Lodge. Swamp Thing carries her body out, leaves her in the street. Really funny that, like, this is a populated supermarket, and there are people commenting like, what is it? I saw a big dog go crashing in there. Oh God, it's a woman. Why doesn't somebody do something? And I think it's so funny that they're commenting on the woman who's killed herself and not the, oh God, what is this massive swamp creature that's carrying her? Like, I would think they would be blaming him or something, but they just kind of ignore him, and he walks off, which is interesting. Constantine shows up finally, and Swamp Thing tells him off, saying like, "I'm not going anywhere else with you." John tells him, "I have your next location on this piece of paper here." Swamp Thing says, "Forget it. I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm going back to Louisiana." And John, is unfazed, like, it's a free world. Go where you like. I'll see you around. And he walks off. Swamp Thing looks at the piece of paper he gave him, and it's got Louisiana written on it. So Swamp Thing cannot escape the reach of John Constantine. Next up, Southern Change. So yeah, this issue I think has a lot of strong themes in it, but the ending is a little bit wonky, like just having her kill herself to escape. So there was a lot of pushback. Well, I don't know. In the introduction, again, that Stephen Bissette wrote for the trade paperback, he talks about how they got a lot of letters about this issue. A lot of them were positive, but there was also some very strong feedback in the opposite direction. And so I pulled up the letters column where this issue is talked about. It's in Swamp Thing 46. So we'll jump ahead a little bit just to look at the letters. Don't look over here. But there's a really long letter published by this woman, Mindy Newell, who calls out Alan Moore for really like being very reductive and not very optimistic about like the options of women in this world. I'm not going to read the whole thing here. I'll try to kind of get this up. So maybe if you want to pause and read this at your own pace, go for it. I think that should be pretty clear on the screen. But I will read the first couple paragraphs. Dear Alan, I am woman. Stand not between me and my wrath. The words above are written by you, taken from Swamp Thing number 40, The Curse. They are strong words, words that are meant as a warning. Do not underestimate me any longer, she is saying. You face a formidable enemy. I have worn the mask of servitude long enough. It is my turn now. So what does this lady in question do? Kill herself. Great answer, Alan. Right up there on the game board of Family Feud. Right up there with staying with that wife-beater of a husband or living with a sexual pervert who abuses your kids. Get a kiss from Richard Dawson and everything will be all right. Where is the strength in suicide? And to Alan Moore's credit, he does publish he responds directly in the letters column. He doesn't have Karen Berger do it. And he does kind of defend his storytelling decisions. And again, I will hold this up here. You can pause this if you want to read the full thing, because it is pretty long. But he does say that, if there is interpretation, if there is incorrect interpretation here, it's a failing of me as the storyteller, not a failing of yours. But please allow me to explain what I was going for. He does talk about how the reason he chose suicide as the route is because he wanted the story to have a bleaker ending, because at this time his readership was primarily boys and men. And he thought that a bleaker ending for the female character would have a greater impact on the male reader and make them take in the message a little bit easier or better. The letter writer also calls out that Alan Moore, is too reliant on the cliche of like PMS, causing them to be cranky. And Alan Moore responds to that as well, saying that's really the only part of the letter that he objects to. Your statement that the curse implies that menstruation turns women into raving maniacs and fallen depressives is something that I really have to take issue with. I think it may have resulted from misinterpretation of the story's title, so perhaps I better explain. And he goes on to explain how the title of the story being The Curse is meant to not refer to... Well, it's meant to play on the fact that the curse, a woman's curse, is kind of a outdated slang term for her period. But in this case, in the story, the curse is meant to refer to the curse of men. Well, hold on. What does he say exactly? I don't want to get this wrong. I wanted to suggest that the real curse isn't menstruation, but rather men's attitude to it, and by extension, their attitude to women as a whole. I don't know if he was successful in that. So that's what I'm saying. Like, this is a good issue, but I don't know if he completely succeeded in getting across the actual messages he was trying to do. At face value, I think it's a pretty good werewolf story. So you let me know your thoughts about this as well. I'm very curious to hear about it. Let me know if there's anything that I missed. I didn't really talk about the art too much, but it was really strong art throughout. I like the werewolf transformation quite a bit. Reminds me a lot of some of the best Bernie Wrights and stuff of werewolves. So Bissette, I think, made a really good werewolf. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to reading.